the QBD podcast.
The Marketing PowWow.
You want to look at who your target audience are and how best to reach them. Your website's got to be up to scratch, and it's got to be able to sort of carry on that journey, but also how they want to communicate back to you. Everybody's always looking for the sort of shortcut, or how they're going to propel their business, how they can get ahead of their competition. Quite varied. Links, videos, images, polls, PDFs, posts. You think it's doing well, but actually you're just sort of chucking money out the window, really.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the QBD podcast, the Marketing PowWow. This is part 2 of my conversation with Rich on paid social. If you've not caught part 1 yet, be sure to catch it on our channels now. So let's get into it, the Marketing PowWow.
QBD podcast.
The Marketing PowWow.
Talk about sort of the importance of building a community and sort of knowing who your audience are and when to target them with what ad. And at QBD, we obviously emphasise the importance of multi-platform strategies. Could you talk about how sort of that's maybe changing across all the different platforms and what it means for businesses sort of going into advertising now?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes down to the audience you're trying to reach. Again, one of the mistakes that I see and the frustrations I think that I have with some of the people that sort of give that advice sometimes is there's still this element of people are in silos. So are you targeting business people? Well, then it's LinkedIn. Are you targeting B2C? Well, then it's this, that and the other. And there is an element of truth to those. But essentially, everybody is on every platform, really. Yeah. I mean, give or take a couple, but most people are on them. And I think, we've had it where someone will say, but, I'm not on Facebook, or I have a Facebook account, I just don't go on it very often. Again, one of the things that people miss is things like audience network. So you wouldn't just see a Facebook ad on Facebook. Facebook have ability to place ads in other places all over the internet. So I can target you through your Facebook, even though you don't go on the platform that much. So I think the one mistake is that you sort of pick one platform. You want this sort of multi-approach. Now, I accept that to reach your target audience, the most effective path might be through LinkedIn rather than Facebook. But there's a cost implication to that because LinkedIn's a bit more expensive than Facebook ads. And so understanding your audience, but how best to communicate with them, how best effectively to communicate with them, and your budgets might actually dictate which one you can do because as we talked about in previous podcasts, you've got Google ads into the mix as well, but there is a sort of hierarchy almost to the spend that you'd have to spend on these platforms. I think the other key thing with the sort of multi-platform approach to this is what you expecting them to do. So LinkedIn can be very effective because you can target people essentially on job title and where they work and the size of the company and their industry and their job role, which everybody loves. But it can be a little bit harder to get that click or that sort of conversion out of LinkedIn. Now, what a lot of the platforms are doing and have done is they will give you a lot of these tools. So I suppose unlike a Google ad where essentially you've got to drive people to your website or to phone you up. With the social media ads, I don't have to send you to my website. I can get you to fill in a form. So you would stay within the social media platform. You fill that form in, I get that information, I get your email address, and then I can follow up. Or I can get you to send me a message. And it's those sorts of call to actions. And again, it's just sort of tapping into what is right for your audience. And there is an element of, you might have to go through a bit of trial and error for that. Well, I remember that we had a very successful campaign that was actually picked up and was featured in some of Facebook's own sort of examples of how best to run ads. That we did it for a car leasing company where initially we ran the ad and the ad was, this was on Facebook ads, and the call to action was a phone call and nobody phoned them up because people don't like phoning people up nowadays. It feels a bit weird. So we're like, right, okay. We felt we got all the ad right. We'd done the targeting. We were happy with our audience building that we'd done. We were happy with our ad content and copy. That was all right. We felt we had that down. But the call to action didn't quite nail it. Because it didn't generate any calls. So it was like, right, okay, we'll change the call to action. We won't get you to phone up. We'll get you to visit their website. And I should say we weren't doing their website, so I'm allowed to say this. So we could send people to the website, but a bit like what we spoke about in our previous podcast about PPC, your website's got to be up to scratch and it's got to be able to sort of carry on that journey, and it can't be that leaky bucket that's got a load of holes in it. So it can't be slow to load or look not responsive designs. So it doesn't look very good on a mobile phone. So that didn't really work either. And what we ended up doing for the car leasing company was just send a message on Facebook, send us a Facebook message. Yeah. And wow, it went berserk. And actually, they phoned us up, and we had to turn the ad off because it had generated so many leads for them, which was lovely. What I should say, and what I'll say is sort of another ad that we did. So we went to work with somebody, a venue, and I'd sort of gone in and said, "Well, you want to watch this thing? I'll get Facebook Messenger," and they got again loads of Facebook messages, but actually that didn't work for them because the leads weren't qualified enough, because all people were doing were asking them questions that the answers to were on their website actually, and so they were getting a lot of inquiries in, but a lot of it was not really. They were just asking general bits of information, and so you've got to think about your audience, how best to reach them. But also how they want to communicate back to you. And it can be through Messenger, and that can work, but sometimes it might not be qualified enough. You might want to send them to your website, but your website might not be optimized enough. So phone calls, there's lots of different sort of factors you need to think of. And having the different platforms and your ability, you don't have to run ads on all the platforms. Yes, do it if you can, if you've got the budget. But if you can't, be sort of nimble enough to think, okay, this is my target audience. So we think that's the best platform to reach them. This is my budget. Okay, which is the best platform which meets my budgets. But also, this is the call to act. This is what I'm trying to get. And actually then you can assess the platforms again and think, okay, well, I'm going to go for that platform because that gets me the link. And it's... a thing I used to cover a lot when I used to do my training courses about ads. It's about your ammo, so it's your audience, your message, and your offer. And if you get those three things right, or you just think about what those three things are, that can help you decide which of these platforms to go on. But having the ability to sort of jump between the different platforms can help, because you can pick it based on, okay, what's my audience, what's my message, what's my offer, and those three factors need to be intact and working well for the ad to be successful.
You mentioned a minute ago about sort of the successful ad where the call to action was messages on Facebook. Do you think Facebook boost ads that are a call to action that keeps people on Facebook versus call to actions that then take people out of Facebook and to the website? Do you think there's any sort of behind the scenes work there with the type of call to action?
I mean, possibly. Would you put anything past them, really?
No.
There's no evidence. There's no evidence, like actual evidence for that. I think organically, when you post organically on social media, we've seen that if your posts include a phone number or an email address, the reach probably isn't going to be as good, because the algorithm might see it as a bit salesy. But you could look at it on that other eye and think, well, for me to email you or for me to phone you, I've got to leave the platform, and they don't want you to leave their platforms. I think there must be a reason why these social platforms give you all these options. You think, this is great, I can send messages, they do get lead generation forms, that's all for free within the ad. Like, you don't have to pay extra to use the messenger platform, the lead platform, all these sorts of things. So I'd be surprised if it's like a really big factor. However, going back to what we talked about earlier about the ad objective in terms of like what's the point of the ad, again, understanding your audience. So are your audience likely to click a link? And the way I've sort of explained it in the past and how those ad objectives works. So say me and you are both part of a audience that we're being targeted. So there's 250,000 people in an audience size, and we're going to run an ad and we're going to spend 500 quid to reach that audience. Now, how does the algorithm decide who to see that first? Now, if the objective of the ad is to generate clicks to your website, if you click links on Facebook more than I do, you're quite happy when you scroll through, you see a link, you click it, it'll open up the browser. Facebook can see that you do that. So and I don't do that very much. I don't click links. if the objective of the ad is I want to send people to my website, I want people to click a link, and we're both in that same target audience of the ad, you're going to see the ad before I do, because you do the thing that the person running the ad, the person paying for the ad, wants you to do. And on the flip of that, if the objective of the ad is a video views, so if we go down that route of trying to get declarations of interest, and actually we've got an audience of 250,000 people, we're going to put £500 behind the ad, and we want people to watch a video. We don't want them to click a link, we want them to watch a video. And I actually watch quite a lot of videos in my social media feed. You don't watch many of them or any of them. I'm going to see that ad before you, even though we're in the same target audience. Right. And so, yeah, it's probably not something where they like deliberately restrict it, but if you think about what your audience is likely to do and want to do, you got to think again, is my audience a type of person that would click the link? If they are, your ad will do really well, because the more people who engage with it, the more people will see it, the more people will click it, and it's just like a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it just sort of goes really well. If you're targeting people and it's a video ad and they don't actually like watching videos, then it's not really going to work. So it's about sort of aligning up those things again of understanding your audience, but also giving that algorithm and the ad platform that guidance to say, we want the people that we're targeting, we want them to do this thing, and they will go and find those people that do that thing.
It wouldn't be a podcast about social media without talking about TikTok. What are your sort of thoughts on it from a business perspective? Obviously, when it first started, it was the dance app, whereas now it's sort of become this beast of shopping, bit more and more businesses going there, but not necessarily from a sales point of view. Like a lot of businesses now we're seeing are actually sort of opening the doors to behind the scenes of the business, and it's all about sort of getting to know the people behind the business and their values and what they stand for. Do you think it's worthwhile for businesses to be on TikTok, and if so, in what capacity?
Yeah, I think TikTok is, you're right, we can't not talk about it, can we really? It's been such a disruptor. And if you look at like the most popular apps in the world and how much Meta has dominated that field, with Facebook being out in front, and then Instagram and WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, they're all owned by Mark Zuckerberg, and TikTok's been the only one that's broken that monopoly, and it's really disrupted the whole thing. For me, I think what it's done is a couple of things. The way it sort of changed the way we view, consume content. So as a result, Facebook, Instagram, and even LinkedIn nowadays is sort of forced into this video feed style that people are finding they're having to do. Which, it's sort of good, bad, keeps everybody on their toes, mixes it up a bit. And it has become a more credible place for you to run ads. However, I think also what it's done, and how I use it to sort of explain to people, is it's looking at what the demand of the platform is. And with any of the things that we've talked about today, if you want to run ads, go for it. If you've got the budget, it can work. You do have to maintain the organic presence behind that. So you can't just have a Facebook page that doesn't post organically and just run ads. And the same for Instagram, the same for LinkedIn, and exactly the same for TikTok. So TikTok ads can be great. You can really target people on it. However, it's can you meet the demand of the platform? So those ads do have to be that sort of video style. There is almost an expectation of how those videos are sort of going to look. If you think about it I always think of it, you think of like a spectrum of content. Down the one end, you could have something like LinkedIn, and there may be a bit Facebook, where slightly more professional, a bit more sort of straight, I suppose. But the variety of content that you can share on those platforms is quite varied. Links, videos, images, polls, PDFs, posts. Like, there's lots of different things you can do. You move slightly up the scale and you get to Instagram, where it is, well, it did only at the start only be images, but now it's videos as well. But you can't share links. You can't share anything else, really. It has to be visual content. And there is an expectation with Instagram of the type of content, because it was sort of set up as this sort of more, photography style, arty style, beautiful images. You've got to meet the demand of that platform. If you want to get something out of that platform, you've got to raise your game, and you've got to have decent content, because that's what that platform and the users of that platform expect. when TikTok came along, it just extended that spectrum even further. So if you want to go and get in the TikTok game, great.
It's a whole job in itself.
But it's a whole job in itself. You've got to then, okay, well, the demand and the expectation of that platform is more than Instagram, and Instagram is a lot more Facebook and LinkedIn is a lot more forgiving. I describe it as a platform. Instagram, you've got sort of certain rules and expectations that you have to meet if you want to be successful in the platform. That is paid ads or organic. And TikTok is just more than that.
Yeah.
It can be great, don't get me wrong, but you got to ask yourself, can you meet the demand of that platform? And it's really hard to generate that content for TikTok because, you know, like I said, it's behind the scenes. I think more and more it's really hard to possibly outsource that because it's got to come from you. It's a brilliant way to get your authenticity across as a business. But you sort of see you need a content creator. I mean, that is the job in the next 10 years is content creator. And so for something like TikTok, yes, you can run ads on there, but it's got to be video format if you're serious about it. But also you've got to back it up with organic presence, which is 2, 3, 4 videos a week doing that same thing. And yeah, for a lot of the businesses we support, you know, typically small businesses, like service-based businesses, B2B businesses, it's actually really hard for them to generate all that content all the time. And I often say, you know, they'll spend so much time creating even organic content. The return on investment is going to be a bit tough. It's going to be quite hard to do. So yeah, the platform is great, and I think it's really up the game of the others. So I think the content that we all consume now on Instagram, Facebook, and even LinkedIn,
it originated.
It's sort of been kick-started
Yeah.
because it changed the goals. I mean, actually, the big thing it changed was just every video was landscape, and now every video is portrait, which is still annoying. But that massively changed the game, and it's a good game, and you can get something from it. But it is a very demanding platform and an unforgiving platform. You can't get away with it. And not that we would advise this, but you can on Facebook and LinkedIn run a static image, so just an image ad, and that image could even be a stock image. We wouldn't recommend you do that, but you could do that. That isn't really even an option on TikTok. Absolutely, you can't even do that. You shouldn't do it on any of them. But you couldn't even do that. And so that's the part to it. And I get it. Everybody's always looking for the sort of shortcut or how they're going to propel their business, how they can get ahead of their competition. And yeah, the likelihood is your competitors aren't probably embracing TikTok or maybe even Instagram as well as they should. But there might be a reason for that because the ability to create the content and meet the demand of the platform is really quite tough.
It goes back to sort of knowing who your audience are as well. Like, if your audience aren't on TikTok, why are you then going to put a load of effort and maybe even hire a content creator for TikTok when you're not going to get anything out of it? So yeah, that is a big factor. I think TikTok is huge, but not necessarily a must.
No, and I've said it a bit. Again, you've got to be brutally honest with your ability to create the content. And the example I always give is I went and did some training once for a group of independent financial advisors, group of IFAs. This is not a slight on them, but they were looking at, I mean, this was about 10 years ago now, actually. So Instagram was the thing on the scene. Instagram was the TikTok back then. And they'd sort of gone through that process of who's our target audience. Well, we want to target a younger demographic. So we're going to go on Instagram because that's where younger people are. And I sort of said the thing about silos. No, it's not as sort of linear as that. But you could apply that same logic now to TikTok. If we want to target a younger demographic, TikTok, here we go, because that's where they are. Yes, that's part of it. And that's what a lot of traditional marketing people would tell you to do. I think the big thing they're missing is then actually be honest with yourself with your ability to create the content. So I said it's not a slight on IFAs, but how is an IFA practice or like accountants or something like that traditional service-based B2B going to meet the demand of even Instagram, let alone TikTok, in terms of you've got to post 3 or 4 times a week organically before you even do the ad if you want the ad to work well. And the example I always gave to those people was a friend of mine is a florist. You compare her ability to meet the demand of Instagram or nowadays TikTok compared to them. She works in a studio, probably not much bigger than what we're sat in today. And I always say, she could spin around 10 times, take 10 photos in 10 different directions, take 10 little quick scanny videos, and she's got 2 weeks worth of TikTok content, Instagram content, easy. So you've got to, yes, you want to look at who your target audience are and how best to reach them. But I think nowadays with social media is, what's the demand of that platform? Because if you're just going to fill it with stock or sort of half-baked, not very well-produced content, it ain't going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the sort of tracking side of things, obviously, whenever you're running any type of marketing activity, you want to be able to track the performance. What are sort of the metrics to look at in sort of the Meta world, the LinkedIn world, and what would you sort of recommend as a good starting point for setting up tracking? Is it code on a website? Sort of how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the tracking thing is so important. I think the first thing is that, yes, any of these platforms that you run ads, they will give you the stats. Now, we'll come on to which of the many numbers should you look at and which ones actually mean anything. They will give you the stats. What we've seen over time actually is they do lose sight of it once that person visits your website. So if your ad is to send people to your website for conversions or sales, back in the day, they could probably see those stats a bit easier, but with data protection and Google and Apple and Facebook not really being friends and talking to each other that much, it's harder for those ad platforms to see what's going on your website. So you need to have Google Analytics in place, definitely. And as we've even found when we've run stuff for our clients is, there's probably going to be a discrepancy between what Facebook is telling you, what Instagram is telling you, what LinkedIn is telling you, and what Google's telling you in terms of the number of clicks and the number of visitors or traffic to your website. That number won't be the same as the one on Google. Now, the thing with that is what we say with a lot of things, if you're measuring your domain authority or any of those things, pick one and stick with that one. Don't keep jumping between the two because you'll drive yourself insane. So that's the first thing I would say is you definitely need to get that sort of basic thing in place just to track it. But be aware of it's not going to be perfect. And if Facebook or LinkedIn is telling you the ad is generated 275 clicks, probably not going to mean 275 people visited your website. Legitimate reasons, someone might click the link but they don't actually make it to the page before it's loaded. It's not going to happen. It's not really going to work. So that's the first thing, really. You do need to get it in place. I think in terms of all the videos and the tracking with the different bits is there's a few key metrics that I personally look at. And what we try to do, and as you know at QBD, is we really try to be proactive with these things. And we're quite happy to sort of lay it on the table and say, these are the targets we're going to try and hit with this ad, and if we don't hit them, you can come knocking at our door and say your ads aren't doing very well, because I think that is a very easy thing to do. That for a lot of people running these ads, you don't know what you don't know, and I think a lot of the time it'd be very easy for an agency like ourselves to hide behind a load of numbers. I could give you a fancy report. I can make you see the number I want you to see that looks really good, and I can sort of hide the number which doesn't look very good in a report. So I think it's really important to have that open, transparent relationship with your agency like we do with our clients, and identifying some of those key metrics. And the analogy that we've used a number of times with these things is having the leaky bucket. So you need to make sure that your website is like watertight. I've actually extended that analogy over time, and so the ads campaign is a bit like the hose pipe going into the bucket, and you've got to make sure that there's no holes in the hose pipe. And the type of holes in the hose pipe would be things like cost per impression, which is for the money that you're spending, how many people are seeing your ad? Because unless people are seeing your ad, you can forget the rest of it. So just track like your cost per impression, and you can get a bit of a feel for that. And let's sort of see that part of it. And there's a very rough rule of thumb with it. For every £100 you spend on someone like Facebook, you can expect around 10,000 people to see it. Now, don't hold me on that because it massively depends on who you're targeting, but there's a very rough rule: cost per impression. How many people, how much money are you spending, how how many people are seeing that ad. That's called your cost per impression. That's your first metric to track. And that's almost the first stepping stone with your ads. The next one then is the click-through rate. So of all those people that see the ad, what percentage of people are going to do the thing you want them to do? Click the link to visit your website. Or click the link to fill the form in, or click the link to send you a message. And that's a percentage, and track that percentage. So that's the next one. And then the third one, depending on how you set the ads up, would be the one which either will be then onto your website is the conversion rate. So of the people that visit your website, how many of them are converting? Or of the people that do open the form on Facebook or LinkedIn, how many of them are filling the form in? How many of them, if they do start to message you, how many of them actually come through as messages? Like, what's that sort of conversion rate? So you've got those 3 stepping stones, and if you keep an eye on all of them, and over time, your challenge is how you can improve those. Something that, as you know, we really try to do a lot with QBD is when we're speaking to somebody and they say, you know, they get 50,000 people seeing their ad, and it goes through all that stuff, and you get cost per impression, then cost per click, cost per conversion, and 3 people sort of drop out the end in terms of leads. What we never want to do at QBD is say, oh, do you want to get more leads? Do you want to get 6 leads? We'll just double your ad spend.
Yeah.
Easy. Like, just double the amount of money you're spending. And I think that's that'd be a failure on our part, actually, as an agency, if we just said, do you want more leads? Spend more money.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, if you keep an eye on, okay, you can still spend the same amount of money, but you want 6 people out the other end, not 3. Can you improve your cost per impression?
Yes.
Which is, can you, with the creatives that you've done, the short little videos, the placement in Instagram Reels and Facebook Messenger, can we increase the amount of places that the ad is being seen? That will increase your cost per impression. Can we look at what the ad copy says? So can we improve the click-through rate? So can we get it from 0.5% to 1%? Can we double the amount of people that are clicking the video? You don't have to spend any more money, but you can double the amount of people visiting your website if you get that click-through rate right. And then, depending on where that conversion happens, if it's on your website or still within the platform, how can you improve that? Can you improve the experience of the landing page? What you say to people in your Facebook Messenger sort of setup, can that be improved? And actually, if you tweaked the cost per impression, the cost per the click-through rate, and the conversion rate, you'll get more people at the bottom. You don't have to put the money in at the top. And so those are the 3 numbers that I would always say, if you're running your ad yourself, or even you're tasking it to another agency, those are almost like the 3 most annoying questions you can ask them, because those are the ones that actually matter. The rest of it, it's all a bit of a vanity project, really.
Yeah. When it comes to the marketing mix in general, all the different channels people can use, where would you place paid social in that sort of hierarchy of, this is definitely what you should be doing versus give or take? Because obviously a lot of people will be thinking, where best can I spend my budget? Does paid social require it to be on top of something else that you're already doing? Can it be a standalone thing for businesses? Yeah,
that's a good question, actually, because I think it can massively vary, although I don't just want to say it depends. Because I was sat with someone, I've sat with 2 different people over the last week, sort of reviewing their digital marketing and giving them, how can they best generate leads? And, that's part of that proactive approach that we take at QBD, isn't it? That, you've got loads of different options out there. You can't do them all because you don't have the budget. You certainly don't have the time. So which of the 2 or 3 SEO, PPC, blogs, videos, organic social media, emails, paid social media, out of all of those, which are the 2 or 3 that are most likely to work for you? It will hugely depend on a lot of factors, but I won't try and duck the question, because a lot of it is around budget, certainly. And I think we found that for people that maybe don't have the budget to get into Google ads, Facebook and Instagram ads is almost like a good little place to test what you're doing, because like I mentioned earlier, it's about your ammo, your audience, your message, and your offer. Now, if you haven't quite got that right and nailed, you could go run you could go run a Google ad, you could go run some PPC, but you might spend 2 or 3 grand and realise you've got it wrong. Whereas with something on Facebook, if you've never done it before, it's not a bad toe in the water, and to think, okay, I could spend 200 or 300 quid and realise that my message is wrong or realise that my call to action is wrong. The example I gave earlier about the vehicle leasing company, that was an ad done on Facebook, and they did spend 200 or 300 quid where we realised, about the phone call not really working and the traffic to the website. We could exactly the same thing on Google, but it might have cost him 10 times the amount to realise those holes in his bucket, those holes in his hose pipe. And so I think it does hugely depend on your budget, certainly. But I think for a lot of small businesses, they want to be able to do things that they can impact. And I think I get why things like email campaigns, organic social media is something that they can do themselves without feeling they've got to spend some money. SEO is, like we always say, it's the slightly longer burn, pound for pound, probably the better way of getting some leads in, but can take a little bit of time. I think in terms of sort of spend on it, I think it massively depends on what your audience and presence is. And I mentioned I've had a couple of conversations with people recently where I've giving them totally the opposite advice, actually, because one of them didn't really have a social media presence at all, doesn't really have that ability to create that content, meet the demand of those platforms, even for something like Facebook or Instagram. And they said, we've got a little bit of money to spend, somewhere between £250 and £500 a month. What should we do with it? And I thought, you could do the ad thing, but you've got a lot of work to do, actually, to get that ad to work. Like, you don't really create that content naturally. You don't really have an audience to tap into. It's going to take you a little while. And actually, your website's pretty good. You just need to sort out a little bit of your SEO, and you might be all right. So investing that money, maybe in a bit of SEO and a bit of content, was probably the best route for them. Lady I spoke to yesterday, the total opposite of that. The website's not that great. She's a new website, and it's almost like a holding page. It's a one-page website. So as you know, you ain't going to get much love out of Google from an SEO point of view for that. So, but she's got a very good social media presence, a good following. Her business is travel, basically. So it really screams content. Got content coming out of her ears, like in terms of photos nice beaches, photos, things that she's done, clients, all the reviews, all that sort of stuff. So yes, one of her issues is her website's not great, but she's got £250, £500 a month to spend. It's going to take a long time to fix that website and for you to see the results. Actually, for her, go and get some ads going. Just tighten up your content a little bit, utilise that natural content, a bit like that florist I mentioned earlier, that it just sort of happens. Like the content just sort of creates itself. So much easier to do. So I think for her, we said to her that you should maybe look at doing the social media ad thing. Now, long term, she needs to fix the website as well. And with that first example, long term, they need to sort their their paid social media out if they're serious about really growing their business. But actually, which one you pick can massively depend actually on what we refer to it, don't we, as what your existing digital footprint is. And that's the thing that I think we do very well, but also we do it a lot. It's just giving people that insight into essentially what does Google and what does the internet think of you. Like, where are you? My analogy for this one, as you've probably heard it, is like trying to scale a mountain, and you've just got to figure out, okay, how high up the mountain are you? And that can hugely depend, and then what budgets you've got, how quickly you need results, like we spoke about in the podcast that we did together around PPC. If you're needing results pretty quickly, SEO is probably not the game for you. The PPC thing probably work more. So what budgets you've got, the time frame in which you need results, but also what your competition are up to. And I think that's, again, one of the things that Facebook and social media ads has as its strength, as I said, is there's no page one of Facebook. So you can sort of feel like you're getting somewhere. And so, I think it hugely depends. But if you've got that sort of £250, £500 at your disposal to spend a month, I think your decisions are, do you invest in that slightly long-term SEO strategy, which will depend on how good your website current status is and how quickly you need exactly how quickly you need their results, or do you go down the sort of Facebook social media ad route, but have you already got a good sort of organic presence ticking along? if you've got a bit more than that, if you're pushing up to £750, £1,000 a month, actually let's go and have a bit of fun with Google. And we've done it a bit, haven't we, where we've gone in and looked at things, and they've been spending £1,000 or £1,500 a month in Google ads. And we think, well, actually, if you just tightened up those few things, the broad match, the phrase match, the quality score, we could get you the same results in Google for less money. So we could almost like half your Google budget, or we could certainly take a third off your Google budget if you just let us optimize these things. And do you know what? Go and take that £300-400 that you've just saved you and go run some Facebook ads. And that is the perfect combination, I would say, because as we've spoken about that in the podcast we did around PPC, Facebook, social media ads are great for getting you that exposure. They're great for getting you out there, and you can target people like you would not believe. But as we said right at the start of this episode, those people might not be expected to see your ad. They've probably never heard of you before. So the social media ads are a brilliant way to reach beyond your network already and go reach those new people. And when they start to sort of find you and visit your website, that's when the Google ad thing can help. And you just get that perfect ecosystem of targeting people and reaching them. Because ultimately, you can reach the same people, you just reach them on different platforms.
Thanks, Rich. That's been really insightful conversation today. Just to finish on, what would be sort of your key advice for businesses in 2025 looking to do paid social? Is there any sort of specific focus or anything like that you would suggest?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, as we said right from the start, is it's really accessible nowadays, and you certainly can do it. Just sort of hold back a little bit. It doesn't mean you should be doing it and you're going to be able to do it well. So yeah, I would. It is accessible, and there are people like ourselves out there that you can reach out to, have a conversation with. We can even just give you a lay of the land, and we've had many a time where we've spoken to someone and they get the idea of it, but actually it's not ready for them yet because they realise they don't quite have the content, or they haven't quite realised they haven't quite got their marketing messages sort of nailed down. So they want to do that a bit. Ultimately, well, we've done bits where we do train people so they can pay us, and we can just run training courses. And I think that's been one of the things that we try and bring to the table a lot, is keeping up to date with how quickly all of this is changing all the time. And it'll probably be that when this podcast goes out, some of the things I've said might even be a bit out of date, because things move all the time, particularly with the AI thing. And that's been such a big new thing. And like I said, it feels really accessible and it feels great. I'll just boost a post and get AI to write my content for you. And you think it's doing well, but actually you're just sort of chucking money out the window, really. And so, yeah, it is a real viable option, I would say, but just be wary and do go and speak to a specialist, an expert like ourselves. He can just give you that lay of the land and those sorts of things. The other thing I would say with it as well is, just think about the targeting that you can do, and just sort of, I suppose, even sort of open your mind to that and really challenge yourself on who your target audience is, because you will be surprised of the depth and the sophistication of the targeting that you can do. As I said, just remember that doesn't mean they sort of want to see your content just because you can target them. So just bear in mind that, any ads that you run on social media, these are people that probably don't know who you are and what you do. So you just need to bear that in mind with your ad strategy. But yeah, it is worthwhile. The other thing as well is that don't make that mistake of like people are in silos. So just because you're a B2B business, service-based B2B, doesn't mean that you can only be on LinkedIn, and vice versa. That just because you're B2C and you sell products doesn't mean that some of the other platforms might not work for you. Chances are, they might be the most effective route to reach your audiences. But again, keep your options open, really, because these platforms are very clever and people are on everything, really. And you can reach people in multiple different ways. And sometimes, you might be able to reach your audience in a way that your competitors don't. So you can engage with them in a way that your competitors don't. And I think the biggest one for me is, like I said, things are changing all the time. So it's good just to even keep in touch base with experts like ourselves, but also be prepared to commit to it. If you're running a campaign And we often talk in terms of monthly ad budget, monthly ad spend, and it's something that we're actually trying to shift away from a little bit, because you really want to talk about campaign budget, because you want to give this thing 3 months or 6 months, because you want to give the algorithm, the AI, the ad platform, the ability to go and find your audience, build your audience, refine your audience, learn what best connects with your audience. And that will take a couple of months. You don't have to spend thousands of pounds, but be prepared just to sort of nurture people through a journey. Because, just hitting somebody with an ad that, do you want to buy my product or service, or I've never heard of you before, isn't going to work. And so, if you're thinking about this sort of stuff, it can work. It can be very cost effective, like we've explained, but just have that little bit of patience and think of it not in terms of a monthly ad spend, but in a campaign ad spend. And rather than thinking I'm going to spend £500 a month for 6 months, think of it, I'm going to commit £2,000-3,000, because you might spend that ad spend might vary. For the first couple of months, you might spend more because you're doing the ad building. You're not really getting the leads, but like we said earlier, but in the month 4 and 5, you only spend a couple of £100 because you've gone from fishing in a huge lake to a little pond, and you can just literally pick people off.
You've done the groundwork.
You've done the groundwork, exactly. So, I think it's the great platforms to get involved with. They'll definitely make it really easy for you to do it, but just be wary that you could get lost in the maze of AI a little bit, and just have that patience. And I think for anyone listening to the podcast, there is help out there. Reach out to us. We can help you, even if it's just to have that discovery conversation that this actually is a topic that you've never really considered, or it's never really been a serious, proactive member of your marketing strategy before, and you just want to sort of kick it around and explore it. Reach out to us. We can help you with that almost feasibility study of sense check it, of like, I don't think you should do TikTok ads actually, or Facebook ads might not be for you, but if you thought about LinkedIn ads, come and have that conversation with us. We can give you the lay of the land. We can help you make that informed decision. And I think that's something that we're very good at, is imparting our knowledge and delivering it in a way that business people are able to say, okay, I sort of get it now. I understand the options available. I understand the budgets and the likely return on investment. I can now make an informed decision on how best to grow my business in 2025. And it's not so emotional as in, I'm not going to do Instagram ads because I don't like Instagram. Isn't really the way to sort of run a business strategy. So speak to us and we can certainly help you make those informed decisions about which of these many tools you've got at your disposal, how you can generate leads for your business.
Thanks again to Rich for joining us today. It's been wonderful to have you in the studio and for you to share your expertise with us on the show. You can find out more about growing your business with social media over on our website. Don't forget, you can send in your digital marketing questions to us and we'll answer them on the show. You can contact us on powwow@qbd.co.uk or simply send us a message through any of our social channels. All the links are in the show notes, and don't forget to like, subscribe and share the podcast so others can enjoy our content on digital marketing. I look forward to joining you again on the QBD podcast, the Marketing PowWow.
The QBD podcast.
Marketing PowWow.